So how long did the gig with the big orchestra go?
It was a 3-month gig.
How much?
All summer.
All summer. And how much did you make?
Kind of funny you asked that. It was kind of cool. I had a dressing room that I could dress in. I had a motel room that I could sleep in. I was playing at one of the most prolific clubs around, you know. Chateau de Ville was right next door. But they wouldn't let me into the cocktail lounge. So I fell in love with the coat check girl.
You did?
Yeah. But they paid me $382 a week.
$382 a week, which was pretty good
In
money.
1966? Yeah.
$400. Okay. So when did you leave Massachusetts, outside of Springfield? When did you?
I joined the Army.
Okay. Which was what year?
1967.
You joined the Army.
Yep.
You went to basic training where?
Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
And then did you go directly to Nam?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And how long were you in Nam?
18 months.
18 months. Straight 18 months?
No, 9 and 9.
Okay. And when you took
tours.
when you took R&R, would you go to Japan? I mean, what did you do?
I've been to Tokyo. I've been to Manila. I've been to Sydney twice.
And they'd send you on R&R, which would be how long? A
Depends.
week?
Manila was 5 days. Australia was 7. Tokyo was 7.
Okay. And so you did 2 tours, so you came back and signed up again.
No, that was the second tour.
I mean, you did 1 tour, but
Yeah.
then what happened?
And I signed up for...
You signed...
What it is, it's a year-long stretch. But if you want to sign up for 6 more months, it gives you a total of 18. You can take a 30-day leave at the 9-month point, the year point, or 15 months. I decided to split it directly in half. So I had 9 and 9.
So did you play any music
In Vietnam?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, man.
You did?
Yeah, yeah.
Jamming with the guys on the bass, you mean, or?
Oh, there was always a guitarist somewhere. You know.
So you mainly played guitar?
Bunkers. Yeah, well, you can't carry a piano on your back.
Yeah.
So that's where I learned, you know, you can pick up a guitar for $15.
And so
You
you just...
break a string, it's $3 for a set of strings, so it's
Right.
rather cheap.
And you played left-handed?
Left-handed.
So...
Nobody makes a left-handed guitar.
Were there other guitar players around at the time to
Pretty
jam
good
with?
ones, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But
so...
I'll write protests on, and we sing to Charlie across the kill area. You know, he didn't like that too much.
Would you really? Would you?
Oh yeah, yeah. We knew it was out there.
Yeah. Okay.
fun.
So you did you see any bands that came to Vietnam to
I
play?
was in one.
You
I
were
was in one. Yeah.
and you
the USO got a hold of me, and they were holding. Actually, I was at a place called Red Beach in Quy Nhon. And there was only 2 pianos in Vietnam, and I had one of them. The other one was in Freedom Hill in Da Nang. And there was one in Shirang Valley, but Charlie made chopsticks out of that. Anyways, yeah, this big dude comes up and he taps me on the back of the shoulder. He says, "You want to join a band?" I said, "Yeah, right, in Vietnam." He said, "I'm serious." And there was 3 black guys and a white dude named Hope. I'll never forget him. It was with the 196th Light Infantry Brigade. And he says, "Man, I can dig this." And he showed me he's all shot up, you know. He was working like on his 3rd tour, but he wanted to get the hell out of there. And so I did like 6 weeks of that. It was supposed to be a morale booster. Yeah, 2 choppers, one that would haul us, and the other chopper would haul the instruments, a couple of pieces of plywood, and a generator. And we'd be out like places like Firebase Mary Lou, 5 miles from the Cambodian border, Ho Chi Minh Trail.
So you were traveling.
I said, "This is it. I'm saving what I'm doing back. You know what I was doing prior." Yeah.
So how long did you do that?
About 6 weeks.
About 6 weeks. You traveled around Vietnam
Did some music.
and did some gigs.
Yeah.
And who was in the band again? Guitar, bass, drums, keyboards?
Guitar, bass, drums, keyboard.
Girl
drums,
singer? No
lead.
girl singers.
No, but we did have like they'd fly in you know, USO shows with like
Name
ladies
acts?
from Manila.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you know, and they'd be very clad, you know, scantily cladded, and you know, it was a good time for all. You know, yeah, I didn't really play any rock and roll, man, until I got out, and I really didn't do it. Yes, I did. What am I talking about? Jackie Tassel, a group called Thrush. It's also the name of a disease that forms in a baby's mouth. But that was a broady bar band, man. Loud.
But back to the Vietnam band, what kind of music did you play when you did this 6 weeks?
Well, you got to remember, man, we had 3 soul brothers. You know, Black
So
Power.
soul
Oh,
music?
we did soul music. We did rock and roll, Little Presley. But all I had was this little Vox keyboard. It was red and white, 44 keys.
You mean like a Vox Continental?
Yeah, whatever.
Those were
it
red
was.
and white, or red and black, yeah. Really? And an amplifier?
Yep, small little.
What about the PA system?
I forget what they had, man.
They had one though, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So then you came back to the States in
I got out
69?
in 1970. I
Okay.
got out of Vietnam in 69. A lot of proud of myself.
and back to Springfield, Mass. And
No, I married. I stayed out in Clinton for a while. I got divorced.
What do you mean you married when you got home from?
I'm not
And how long did that last?
3 years.
Well, we don't have to talk about
You
that.
know, what the hell? You know, you want to know how many moles I got on my body?
No. We want to know about your piano and your
Anyway,
gigs and the
anyway.
music scene.
So, one great band that I did play with was out of Boston, and they were called Negative Earth.
What year was that?
Right before I left to come up to New Hampshire, about 72.
About 72.
Yeah.
And what made you come to New Hampshire?
I was dying, man. Too much booze, too many drugs. Lost everything I had, you know drinking too much. Met up with Merle Kenyon, you know.
That's who you met up with.
Yeah. He said,
And you started
come up
doing-
here and I'll get you a gig. And I said, he said, we'll clean you up a little bit and see what happens.
So that was 72, and you came to Claremont.
No, I stayed there until like about 74.
You mean stayed in Massachusetts?
No, in the commune, Grafton, New Hampshire.
Oh, a commune.
I lived in a commune for 2 or 3 years.
Really?
Yeah,
In Grafton, New Hampshire.
yeah. That's where I met. That's where Merle brought me.
How many people?
We had 12 people living in an 8-room house. So pretty cool.
12 people.
Yeah,
And how did that work out?
fantastic. Where else could you live for $35 a month?
So,
And it wasn't a rampage, and there was order. Things were orthodox. I mean,
Who was in
there were
charge?
couples that had their privacy,
Right.
and we had a beer fund. We had no drugs. If you wanted to smoke a joint, you went outside.
yeah.
It was clean.
Yeah.
But used to raise vegetables and shit. I had a couple of geese, and right out in the boonies, right up by Ruggles Mine. And now the guru of Kenyon's Corner is now the chief of police.
Nice.
Yeah, he deserves it.
Nice.
He knows
Oh,
everybody there.
So,
Anyways, he and I did. We started out at the Canaan Inn. But now we had Hojo's, and then it didn't stop for about
you
3
hit
years.
Hojo's about what year then? 75, 76?
Somewhere.
And you and Merle?
Yep,
And who else?
that's it.
That's it.
Yep. He sang, I did the harmony over him. I had a real high falsetto. I lost that.
You guys did a duo,
Yep.
guitar and keyboard.
Yeah, we were doing stuff nobody else was doing.
Now, did you have your organ?
Hold on. I had a Gilbertson Paragon with a Leslie 700 and a Leslie 722.
Oh, so how the heck did you move that in?
We had an international pickup truck. That's it. That was it.
And you had to move it in, and there it sat as a house band.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, we did weddings on the side and stuff. but-
When you did a wedding, did you move the organ out?
Oh yeah.
Jesus.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. That wedding that organ went where we went. That thing went.
Yeah.
But it had a built-in selected rhythm, and I've been kicking bass all my life.
So you were playing bass
Yeah.
a lot with when you played
When you
organ.
play an organ, you play bass.
That was the school that you came from. Kicking bass
Oh yeah.
with the
I
hand.
wonder if I could still do it today. I don't know. I did
Well,
the Leslie's bit.
I videotaped you doing it with my Hammond organ, and
Oh, I can't. It's got to be a certain height.
I know, but we should film you again doing that because it's cool to watch you do that, and it sounds great.
Well, it gives you a bass line. That's
So-
all it does.
so-
nothing fancy.
So after Hojo's, which was called the Old Kings Highway Lounge, right?
Old Kings Highway Lounge.
In White River Junction, Vermont, we should add. So then, did you get another house gig? Like you said, you played Lake Maury.
Lake Maury, I had one whole summer and one fall.
And when was that? 80s, 70s?
No, right around It was right before I took off for Kentucky, so it had to be 75.
Oh, really? So it was right around the time of Hojo's then.
Now, Hojo's was before that. There's about a 4-year club, but I'm not sure of the dates.
Yeah.
But I know the places where I played.
Right. So tell
Maybe
me.
not even in the order that I played them in, because we're talking 40 years ago.
Now, this is what I want to talk about. The late 60s and early 70s, people like Jimmy Packard.
Jimmy Packard was around. You know how you knew all these old guys? Because I don't know about, we didn't see too many rockers, but all the jazz people, all the country bands, all the good ones, the bad ones, the funny ones, the ones who couldn't play but was working every night. We all met at the Tally House, the bus station up there in White River Junction. And we'd stay until we had breakfast, had about 9 pots of coffee, sobered up, and get home. But you meet all this. It's very eclectic. It wasn't. Everybody was sociable. There was none of this segregated bullshit, oh, I'm a rocker, I don't want to talk to a rapper. Or, oh, country, what's that country game? The competition that's around today. It wasn't like that back in the old days. Everybody worked. Of course, your laws weren't so stringent where you have 2 beers and you get locked up.
Yeah.
All the different scenarios.
Well, so Jimmy Packard, Yvonne and the Reverbs, were they around then?
Yep, Jimmy O'Keefe. I want to say something else, but I won't.
No, we have to keep it straight ahead because we got a lot of ground to cover. Jimmy O'Keefe. Okay, you told me that story, by the way.
Yeah,
And
we'll leave that bleeped.
yes. And who else in the Upper Valley? Well, of course, Eve and Don Whitcomb.
Even Don Whitcomb. That was long before I got here. But Eve came to Claremont and took Claremont by storm. And she brought in people like Big Joe Burrell, and Johnny Carter. And of course, Joe would bring his entourage, and Eve would have hers that came down from Canada, because she was originally from Toronto.
She was working in Toronto in jazz clubs up there.
Yeah, well, she sang with Sarah Vaughan, Lionel Hampton, in the old days. Marimba player, xylophone, or whatever.
Yeah.
And she rubbed elbows with a lot of really cool people. And
did she
always called her Lady Eve.
Yeah, that was her stage
exactly
name.
What that woman was. She was a lady.
She was amazing.
And off and on for a long, long time. And I've worked with her, Ted Herbert.
Ted Herbert's another name.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, we're going back there, aren't we?
Yes. Well, see, this is why this is good to archive this stuff. And also, we met Frank Morse, you and I.
That's right. Now, Frank, when you see those old flicks of the pyramid, water skiing in the pyramids down in Coral Gables in Florida, that was Frank teaching them how to do that. And he sort of like, he bought an island up here at Sunapee. Plus, he had his land. And he gave up his property because he says, I can't stand to see a speedboat go by. There's no respect like there was in the old days, and it's too cluttered and blah, blah, blah. So he sold his island, he sold his property.
That he had right on the lake.
Yeah.
And
he
when,
bought that place that we visited.
Right. Which is in Sunapee.
Yeah.
Not in the harbor, but just off the route there.
If you remember, I have never met a man so complicated in my life. I mean, just a genius with it, but very simple to talk to. When you see that big white organ that he built, in his living room, and then all the guts sorted down in his cellar.
Right.
Were you there? Were you there?
Yes.
With me? Yeah.
The brain that ran the organ was downstairs in the cellar.
It took him 25 years to. Now, who would have the patience today to build a musical instrument?
I don't know, but we I'm sorry that we didn't get an interview with Frank because he was 90, wasn't he, when he passed away?
He was in his 90s.
a year last year in 2009, wasn't it?
Yeah, I went to his funeral where we scattered his ashes behind the house in that little creek that ran.
Yeah.
Ran down.
Yeah.
I felt really bad because his dog was still looking for him.
His dog was, yeah. But Frank Morse. Did he have an organ studio and sold and serviced?
And he had, he'd do like, well, I would do it for him. I'd set up clinics, 6-week clinics, and bring in people that, couldn't play but were interested in the instrument and what it could do. And at that time, he was selling Gull Branson, which I sold those when I was in Worcester, Mass. And really easy. And I had kids and I had adults, and then I gave them a test at the end of the 6 weeks. I think it was like $15 for the course, and just try to get some interest in the instrument, because they are high echelon. You can pay a lot of money for a home theater organ, and sometimes you get a sale, sometimes you wouldn't. But Frank was really special to work with. He's the old iron breed, man, the old school. The people that we aspire to today, and only wish we had half the talent that man did.
Frank Morse.
Frank Morse.
R.I.P.
Yep.
Okay, but that was a side conversation. We were talking about Lady Eve and Don Whitcomb. Where did Lady Eve meet Don? Was it on the road?
It wasn't on the road. I think it was in White River Junction.
At a gig?
Yeah, and I don't know the whole story, but I know that Don had sent her flowers, and they hooked up, and eventually married. Had Aaron. And
did Eve have any kids by a first marriage?
No.
She was never married.
I don't recall.
And what about Don? Don was married.
Oh yeah, Don was married. He had Kevin, Donnie, and Karen. He had 3 children.
3 kids.
Yeah, none of them musical.
and Don Whitcomb is absolutely a legend, as Lady Eve is. But Don now, when did he open Whitcomb's Music Center in Claremont? Any idea?
That was before I got here.
Okay, so it had to be early 60s,
yeah.
Let's say.
Yeah.
I used to love going to Don Whitcomb's.
We used to all hang out on that corner.
That was...
and if something came in, we'd try it.
Well, that goes along with what we've been talking about, and that is so much music and so many places to play in the 60s. If you were a kid...
You know what he used to do, too? In his back room was a piano, and that's where he taught accordion. But
that's right. He was a great accordion player. That's right.
Right.
Okay.
And there was a refrigerator there. He'd always keep a bottle of JD in there, And I go back and I take my suds for the day, and sit at the piano and play, because I didn't have a piano in my house, And I'd go in and I'd play, and it was really nice. We had a really good rapport,
He always had such a big smile on his face, and his eyes were squinting.
Yeah.
You remember?
Yeah.
And one day I walked in there. I feel funny bringing this up, but he had a lovely gal who his clerk there.
I know what you're getting at. Yeah.
And
Adrian?
Was that her name?
Yeah.
Adrian. And this was probably let's say the 80s, maybe the 70s. I can't remember.
No, it's not that far back.
Okay, it was.
He died.
Yes.
Yeah, he was 60 and she was 23.
Right. He was 60, she was 23. And Don told me one day, he said, "See that girl over there?" And I said, "Yeah, Don." He said, "That's my private stock." I never told anybody.
Yeah, but the opposite side of the coin on that is Lady Eve suspected it, found out. All right, and she said, like when Don was sick and he couldn't do the store, and she'd have to come in with the receipts of the day, and he'd light up like a candle, and she knew something was going on. Finally, Lady Eve left.
Oh, she did leave Don?
She left the house, yeah.
Because of this inappropriate...
Adrian moved in.
Oh, she did move in and took care of Don.
Yeah.
See, this is stuff that's, I would never know.
I'm giving up my private sector here.
Well, rest in peace to Don and Lady Eve, who were the best, legends.
Well, let's not leave out Big Joe Burrell.
Well,
worked with him a few times.
Did you?
Oh yeah, just as a couple of numbers here and there and whatever. But when they had their parties down there on Mountain View Ave,
who did?
Eve. All right.
They'd have parties.
Yeah, they last 3 days.
Really?
Oh yeah, step over the bodies in the kitchen, pour yourself a Bloody Mary in the morning. Music constantly. Cops going by, they're enjoying it.
So they'd just be jamming up a storm for 3 days and drinking and smoking reefer, probably.
Come on, man.
You know how those
can't
jazz,
give away all our attitude.
you know how those jazz musicians are.
Oh, yeah.
Were.
They call that getting engaged. You know. That brings up another local, Ray Genero, Barry Sax man, owned the Circle Cave Ranch. If you go underneath the bridge in Claremont and you see that trailer down there with the,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that's Ray Genero. I don't think he's alive because he was in his 80s at this time. And I'm playing right across the street over here at the Escutney House. I had that gig for weeks.
Where, what year?
I don't know.
80s?
I'm trying to think of.
The
Yeah,
Escutney House.
It was in the 80s. It was in the 80s. And,
Okay. Well, tell us some more of the. I'm sorry.
But anyways, kicking piano over there, in walks this elderly man with a saxophone. And God, the guy could play, but he had no rhythm. You know, he
could solo like to beat the band, but
you know, and God bless him, he was unbelievable. But the point is, we're all sitting in a pack, you know, at a table, and the owner's daughter, and myself, and a few guests and whatever. And he comes over and he says, "You kids with your fucking sex, drugs, and rock and roll." He says, "I smoked my first joint in 1933. And I can remember when the sheriff paid off the mayor with a gallon of whiskey a month. You have nothing over us with you. In my day, it was booze, broads, and bands."
nothing's changed, has it?
No, man, just different names. It's all the same. Sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Booze,
But
broads,
booze,
and
broads,
bands.
The 3 Bs.
Yeah. So let's talk more about life on the road with Joe. We'll just jump around. And the story that I love was when you were playing at the lounge at the West Lebanon, New Hampshire airport. And you got a job offer.
I got a job offer from the infamous Dave Davis, some distant relative of yours down the road. I don't know what it was. But he had
My Uncle Dave.
He had a 1962 Aero Commander twin. And he says, "If you want to try this is what you're doing right here." I said, "I'm going to have a hard time getting, you know, a 360-pound organ on your plane." He said, "We'll set you up when you get down there."
So he had a 62 Aero Commander
twin.
with a pilot.
With a pilot.
His name was Jeff.
Jeff, yep, we used to call him Lurch.
Yeah,
Tree.
he was like 6'6".
He was 6'7".
How did he fit in the cockpit of this plane?
And you know, he used to fly recon and shit over
And now?
North Vietnam. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he excellent pilot.
Wow.
I can tell you some stories about him. Though.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So you're playing in this club. You and who? Merle.
Merle Kenyon. Same guy that ran the commune out in Grafton.
Merle. So and you're
wait a minute. Okay. The clubs that we're playing in down there, you got to remember this. They're 100% bona fide redneck clubs.
Wait a minute. We haven't left Lebanon yet.
I'm talking about, okay, Dave flew us down to Florida.
Uncle Dave said, I got a gig.
Well, he didn't drive it down. He flew it down.
You and Dave and the pilot and Merle.
That's it.
And that's it?
That's
Not
it.
Aunt Nancy?
Nope. Nancy sued him for divorce the third time, man, for tax purposes.
So
he sued her.
Well, during your stint down in Florida
like that,
playing?
yeah.
All right, so Dave flies you down the next day, right?
Yeah.
You leave this gig in Lebanon.
Right.
You tell him, look, we're going to Florida.
Yep.
And you fly down to Bushnell, Florida.
Panisofsky.
Lake Panisofsky.
Bushnell was a few miles away.
Right.
And
Did he land at the local airport, do you remember?
No.
He had his own strip.
airport is his backyard.
Right. He had his own landing strip.
Yeah, he pulls up, ties it down, and then you walk through a pool area.
Right.
And the house is built around the pool. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Right.
We stayed there a few days. Stayed at a place in Bushnell where I saw a guy get shot. Real friendly, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, so we played a place called the Thunderbird.
The Thunderbird, which Uncle David owned.
Right. And then the Lariat in Bushnell. He owned two clubs.
Yes. The
Couldn't
Lariat.
wait to get out of there, man.
So how long?
I hung around for about 2 weeks. I had to go.
What? About 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So what would happen in these clubs just because it's cracker country USA, rednecks, you mean? And
I don't know. I felt like, you know, anything could happen at any time.
really?
Yeah.
Well, like the Wild West.
Well, yeah. You know, and here we are playing Seals and Crofts, and, you know.
So you don't think you should have done more country western, do you think?
Oh, yeah. You know.
Oh.
Rolling, rolling, rolling.
Yeah.
My
Really?
cheeks are swollen.
Yeah. So after 2 weeks, you said, okay, now how did you get home?
Commercial flight.
And Uncle David was okay with it?
Yeah, well, the equipment was still sitting there, so I don't know what he did with it.
He went out and bought the organ and PA.
An organ, yeah, PA, two little monitors like that.
Yeah.
Looked like they came out of an old Victrola. You
Yeah, yeah.
know? But came back.
So then what did you do when you got back to Lebanon? Did they take it back at the Skybox? Or the, not the Skybox, but
Yeah, I went back with Merle. We did a
to
few,
that gig?
Yeah, we did a lot of gigs.
And you traveled around?
Yeah,
Okay.
as a duo. And then I heard a group at Spalding Auditorium was looking for somebody with a string machine. And back then the Mellotron was a big thing, but Hohner came out with a Hohner string box synthesizer. Very compact, only had like 61 keys on it. But it was what they called trifennial sound. Bass came out one jack. Piano came out the other jack. Strings came out the other jack.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I had portable bass pedals, so I was kicking bass.
Wow.
So, I showed up, and it was mostly the remnants of the New Kingston Trio. Jimmy Connor, who wrote Grandma's Featherbed for John Denver. Pat Ryan, that just got back from Tokyo with Bob Shane.
That was your first connection with this band?
Yeah. Nick Heil, who he's from Norwich, Vermont, another, mountain boy. Once owned the Kingston Trio, independently wealthy, excellent banjo player. And Greg Austin, who I eventually replaced. Who I still see every once in a while. He's a great guy, Lexington, Kentucky now.
Greg Austin was another name around the Upper Valley in the 80s.
Yeah, back in the day.
He packed the Sheridan in
I know.
Lebanon, West Lebanon.
Right. Funny story about Nick there. Nick really got heavy into the sauce. He was heavy. He was addicted to it, And they had to carry him out. You know those luggage carriers with the
Bellman's carts?
Bellman's cart?
Yeah.
Put him on that, took him up to his room. Shit, man.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
You mean after the gig or?
Before he was going on stage.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He pulled a George Jones, man. Unbelievable.
Wow.
By the way, speaking of which, Greg Austin worked with George Jones.
He did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until George Jones fell into Greg, drunk.
Wow.
On stage.
That's
the last time I played with that dude.
Wow. Wow. People take
but
it
anyways,
personally when you,
So the group's name was Rockcastle River Company, even though they, we got all these people from, big names, and we did we went across country like 3 times, about 3 years.
You did. You went on the road with these guys.
Yeah.
So after you left them, we did gigs with Brother Davey and you back in the 80s and did some recording.
Yeah. And then Cooper came along. David Cooper.
David Cooper.
What a writer he is, man.
Yeah.
Well, you got him on your CD.
Yeah. So let's go back to the 60s again. You really didn't make it up here until in the early 70s.
You keep saying the late 60s I was in a war. So that doesn't even count, it's just, my life started young musically, then it was a break, and, when I turned 21, I started really, really, pursuing it. I always studied though, I'd always have some music and imagine what it would sound like in my head and read the notes and blah, 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 blah.
So you've written quite a few pieces through the years.
Through the years, and I've never been one for title or position or whatever, but a lot of stuff I do arranging, for actually it's to me it's like co-writing, but I give the stuff away. If somebody conceptualizes it, I really do believe that belongs to them, and I'll give it to them, the church's material and stuff like this. So I don't want anything from that.
So you've been involved in this really neat church people are talking about. What's the name of the church?
Oh, Praise Chapel. Hartford, Vermont.
It's called the Praise Chapel?
Yeah.
I thought it was the Rock Church.
No.
But that's what they nicknamed it?
No, never.
Is the Rock Church something
There's
else?
no Rock Church that I ever played. The Rock is in your head.
Okay. The Praise Chapel.
Yeah.
And okay. And so you play every Sunday in the band or
No,
by
there's no
yourself?
band. It's just me and a bunch of female singers.
Okay, that's the nucleus of the band. Any special guests?
On occasion. We had a guitarist last week sit in.
But you've had a young drummer, right?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Not at the moment.
It might be, I would think it'd be tough for drums in a church just because they're too loud.
No, they're not. No, these churches, some of them are big, man.
Yeah.
You can fit a couple of bar rooms in it, but you know.
So you've been working on a praise gospel CD of songs.
Of sorts, yeah.
And you've almost got enough to do a CD, but you just can't bring yourself to finish it.
No,
So anyway.
it just doesn't involve me. It's kind of complicated. It's like anything else. You know, the church itself has levels of authority. You know, and you know the levels of authority, especially for the music too. It's kind of hard. You got to remember, man. These people are a lot younger than I am, and they got day jobs. They got kids. They're teaching school. You know, I'm talking about the praise and worship team girls. So they really don't have the time to commit. So what I'm thinking about doing is doing all the music, you know, first.
Yeah, bringing them in,
And
overdub the vocals.
Bringing them in.
Sure.
You know, because
Plus they can learn
that's what I do anyway.
they can learn the arrangement at home and then come in and do it. This is another side note, but I was thinking about Jesus myself, and I said, I wonder what Jesus had for a last name. And I will ask you that question. What was Jesus' last name?
Christ.
It was? Was it?
No, he's Jesus the Christ. It was.
I mean, he didn't have like Jesus Jones or
No.
Jesus Smith.
It was
I mean,
just Jesus.
But you know what somebody else told me?
What?
Jesus of Nazareth
Yeah.
was his title.
Well, yeah, that's true. He had many titles. The Comforter.
But he got born as a baby, right? His mother was Mary.
His mother was Mary, but she was.
What was her last name? Magdalene.
No. Mary Magdalene was.
His girlfriend, wife.
No.
Okay.
Mary Magdalene in the Bible is actually depicted as a woman of sin who came to get cleansed by Jesus, and she became friends with Elizabeth, and they were the two at the tomb. The rock was removed, and Jesus was nowhere to be found.
So what was Jesus' mother's name? Mary.
Mary,
What was her last name?
I don't know, but
Okay, what about his father, Joseph?
it would be if he had a title, it would be like Joseph of.
So whatever city he's from. Okay. That was my question. So they didn't really have...
It's you know, it's usually a first name basis. It's always a first name basis. You know, if you start out like Solomon, David, you know, Isaiah, Jeremiah. There's no. Actually, you know what it is? I just thought of this. It's the 12 tribes. All right, like I would be Joseph of the house of David. All right, and it might be.
So they were tribal
it might be
names.
Ricky from the house of Levi.
So it was tribal names
Yeah, that's what they call tribes.
back then. Okay. All right, so let's conclude this by saying that you're currently doing gigs and
Unemployed. I love it.
and doing studio work and the
That's it.
church
That's it.
and you play with other people and
On occasion.
but so you've been playing. You said you've been playing what 50 years.
55 years.
Been playing keyboards and piano and organ for 55 years.
55 years.
Wow. Wow. So, we're going to take a break and we're going to film you playing. Maybe not now, but on another day, but
I don't have enough coffee in me, man. You got to make some more coffee.
yeah. So,
You got enough?
yeah. Any other trips on the road? You went down to the Florida Keys and played
I
with me.
went down with my friend over there, Rick Davis, you know, and
Went to the Keys. It was 1989, I think.
right.
The spring, or was it the summer?
No, it was closer to fall. It was in September.
Was it really?
Yeah.
And you and Davey, you and my brother drove down, and you guys all had a good time, and we.
Yeah, we thought we saw some dude dead on the New York Thruway.
Really?
Yeah, it was laying on a medium strip.
Really? Yeah, but your trip back was interesting because you left Marathon in the Florida Keys.
There's
and
one road in, one road out. You know, maybe there's a couple of side roads, but how the hell we ended up in the Glades? And
well, no, because you got up on the mainland, and we're heading up the Florida Turnpike.
Yeah.
But before you got on that, you had to pick it up in Fort Pierce, which used to be, back in the 80s, was very easy to miss. You would come to a stoplight, and you go right or go left. And that's what happened.
Oh, well, anyways, we ended up in Alligator Alley.
Yeah.
I said, Davey, you get a flat tire.
Heading up the west side of the state when you should be going up the east side, yeah. So
but we met up with some dude that brought us all the way to Daytona. So we were free and clear from there.
So, yeah, so that was...
that was a good trip.
Yeah, yeah.
We made it in 33 hours.
33.
That's
with that bad turn. That cost...
I'm talking about going down.
Oh, going down, yeah. So that was the Keys. Now, you played with Al Alessi.
Oh, man.
Yes?
Yeah.
And that was a tough gig for you.
Yeah, you know, and he'd fire me and then rehire me and fire me and rehire me. Good man, good, you know, good musical ability, but I just don't know. There was, he burned a lot of bridges, man. You know, and things he can't go back to now that he, you know, at least he's not doing anything in this country. I know he went over to Amsterdam and did a show, but I heard rumors about that we can't speak of on tape.
Okay.
And,
so that was all right. So anybody else? I guess I'm sure we missed a lot of people.
well, what was really neat is the people that I met, you know, by being in these groups, you know, and by traveling or whatever. And Monticello, you know, it was. These names don't mean anything now, but people like Sergio Franchi, Connie Francis, Juliette Prowse, Victor Borg.
Did you meet Victor?
Oh, yes. I was with him every night.
Where?
Monticello.
Which was a dinner club?
Yeah, dinner club. Maybe about a 1,500, 2,000 seat lounge.
And where was it again?
Framingham, Mass.
In Framingham.
Right across it. If Shoppers World is still there.
So it was the biggest dinner club in Eastern Mass.
Probably.
Then.
Yeah, they had a couple of others, like they had the Chateau de Ville right next door.
Right.
Then they had Lenny's in Boston before it burnt down.
Right.
Buddy Rich used to play there all the time.
Yeah. So you met when you were younger. You met a lot of guys.
I love Victor Borg.
So what? You know, tell me about Victor.
Victor was a Norwegian gentleman. He had some amazing stories, but what he did do, he brought pictures of his home. He lives in Greenwich, Connecticut. And his pianos, I forget, he had 2 or 3 grands, you know, and wall-to-wall marble floor. But the thing that was really, I mean, the guy is such a...
Well, he passed away.
Oh, yes, I know he's dead. But he had free-running deer in his front yard, you know.
You saw his place?
No, I saw the pictures. He brought the pictures.
Oh, okay.
He used to fly in by chopper, you know.
To the gig?
To the gig and then go home by
chopper.
And always used to accuse me of playing with my organ. You know.
He would.
Always accuse me of playing with my organ.
Yeah.
But he had that smile, that very warm smile.
And he was quite a pianist himself, wasn't he?
Oh yeah. And there was always 2 pianos on stage, so he'd go out and do something. I'd run up behind him. But nothing professional. You know, just have the pleasure of just goofing with him. You know. And knowing him just that much.
Yeah.
But you don't forget people like that.
Yeah. So at that dinner club, you met quite a few famous people at the time.
Well, there was only like, you figure they're there for 10 days.
That would be the gig, 10 days?
Some 7 a day, some 5, some 7.
One show a night?
Yeah. That's it.
And it would be seated, it's a big dining room with 1,500 to 2,000 people?
Something like that.
That's a big operation.
Yeah, it was huge. Caesar Tamango owned it.
Wow.
And then they had a lounge with the Perry Connie Trio in it. And
wow.
Yeah, you know, that was one of my transitions though, because when I was like 17 years old, I was a geeky kid. You know, the only thing I was interested in was music. I didn't even go to PE, you know, physical education. I went up to and did fine arts, you know, with combining art and music and stuff like that. But, you know, going from that geeky little kid to, you know, first a soldier and then, you know, well, no, not soldier came afterwards, but, you know, playing in clubs with, you know, being surrounded by these people. I'll tell you this, I had a brand new motorcycle in 3 weeks. I had a car in 3 weeks. I had money in 3 weeks.
When you started drawing the paycheck, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a 53 Chevy. I had a Yamaha Big Bear 250 Scrambler.
Nice.
Take to work all the time. Yeah.
Nice. So we'll just wrap it up by just talking about the bands in Claremont back in the early 70s.
I wasn't associated with them.
But you knew of them.
Yeah.
And especially through Don Whitcomb's.
Yeah, well, hanging out there.
Everybody.
Yeah, Kerry Rush was always trying. Jimmy Bell was always successful. Who else used to go in there?
But we still, you know, we had, Springfield, Vermont had 4 or 5 bands. Windsor had 3 bands. Claremont had 4 or 5 bands. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? The Upper Valley had.
Everybody was making money.
Well, they were working.
But you know what the sucky thing is now? The American Legions, Eagles, Elks, Moose, all your private organizations. You go there in 1973, they were paying you $300 a night.
Right.
Whether you were a single or you had 10 pieces.
That was their budget.
You go to the same place.
Today,
$300
right.
a night.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's definitely, the money has not risen for that level of band and music scene.
Well, it's not really lucrative anymore.
Right.
It isn't.
Well, it never really was lucrative, was it? I mean, you were lucky to make $100 a night.
Yeah, but for the people in the industry that really like Aerosmith, like the Cars, like you know.
Yeah, but they all starved and couldn't get gigs before.
I know.
You know, before they.
Yeah.
So and they did starve while they were waiting for their big break. Or,
Well, let's cut this out.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say?
Nah.
Okay, Joe Peters.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.